This video is a part 2 of surviving the ice sheet. You can watch the first video here. I hope you guys enjoyed the second part. We left off the last video having just returned from the tundra. Arnold was starved, cold, and his base had just been burnt down. After opening the door to let some of the heat go out, I let him repair some of the walls before thinking of my next move. I realized that I hadn't checked the wildlife since I came back, and 2 snow hares and a fox had arrived. The closest animal to me was the fox, but I didn't want to risk fighting it, so I went for the snow hares instead. The snow hare put up a bit of a fight and got me injured in the leg, but nothing too serious. I decided to take care of my starvation first. I was gonna go back home and butcher the rabbit and eat it before I went for the other one. In the meantime, I planned for him to mine some more steel, because we had to rebuild our table and our horseshoe pin. But it was of the priority that I got rid of all the hares first before they ran off, because last time we saw what happened when I had no food. After having killed the first, I noticed that the second one had wandered in very close by. This was very lucky, because I could get 2 for 1. I would only take back one of the rabbits, hoping that there weren't any predators to go eat the other one. I realized I could place my horseshoe pin inside, which would mean that I wouldn't have to worry about freezing to death while he's playing, so I was planning to rebuild it there instead. But as you can see, my character was still in a constant state of malnourishment. If we check his needs after having eaten a rabbit, he only has about half a food bar. We were extremely lucky that a pack of monkeys started coming by. I figured that these guys weren't so tough, so I started killing as many as I could. In a previous playthrough I had a herd of capybara come through, and they killed me. I was getting extremely lucky with the amount of monkeys I could take out. This could feed me for days, and everything was starting to look really good after this point. I was able to catch all of them off guard without getting very injured. But this one started to bite me, at which point I had to call it quits, because I still had no remedy against infections, so that would be 100% death. Now the one good thing about this challenge is that animals will never spoil, so I didn't have to worry too much about leaving the monkey corpses outside. I figured that I'd come back for them later after I got some of my base rebuilding done. So the next day I went mining for steel again. I had to rebuild my table and my stool, but I also had a unique opportunity to build a butcher table. Because of the wood that I brought back, I could finally make one. A butcher's pot only gave me 70% of the harvest, which meant that I was not getting the optimal amount of meat and skin from all the animals that I was killing. So I was happy that I could finally invest in something that would make it so I would be starving less of the time. But before I would make the butcher table, I went to butcher one more monkey. This was because I was very hungry, but also because I had just gotten enough light leather to finally make a bedroll. This will make my sleep way better, and it will also get rid of the mood debuff from sleeping on the ground. Unfortunately, he only ended up making a poor quality bedroll, but it was better than nothing. And with the table and hoop zone rebuilt, my base was starting to look nice again. And now I would finally gather the steel needed for the infamous butcher table. This table being built was a big worry of mine, because you cannot build one without wood. But thanks to the expedition to the tundra, I was finally able to build one, and now I could make the most out of every animal and human I killed. The thing I noticed while playing this challenge compared to watching other people play it is the loneliness. If you don't have the 500% multiplier of threats, the game seems a lot harder. And I find this to be because I have no opportunity to kill anyone for their clothes, and I have no humans to cannibalize. So once again I was forced to hunt snow hares and slowly make my own clothes. I spent the next in-game hours butchering all the monkeys that I had gotten before the Arctic fox could get to them, and I realized that I did not need wood to make a steel simple research bench. So this marks the point where I decided to make my first base expansion. And while this is being built, I gotta emphasize that I'd never really done this challenge before. I have about 1,200 hours on this game, and I bought it back in 2016 or 18, but the past 2 years I just spent doing solo runs in temperate forests. I only did about 3 runs of this while I tried to record the first video, and they ended very quickly, so I had never gotten this far and I wasn't sure what to do. But I figured it wouldn't do any harm to move my stockpile into the small research room. I was trying to make my bedroom as nice as possible so he didn't get too many debuffs, but I don't think I could get it out of the awful range by just doing that. To finish this small building project I would need about 150 steel, and that's not something I can carry in one go. So I took about 65, and then after bringing it home I went to sleep for the day. And all of a sudden we finally had our first transport pod crash. But of course she was naked and did not have a parka. When looking at her stats I was half tempted to save her, but I was getting into old habits. I did not have the luxury to afford to house a second person, so after some debating with myself I figured I should just leave her out there to die and then bring her home when she's a corpse. And ironically the timing was also impeccable, because Anno had just started longing for human meat. So I decided to go butcher the last monkey that I'd forgotten about, and then all of a sudden I totally forgot about the old snow hare I killed, and this was a very nice surprise. But while building my base expansions I realized the Arctic fox was getting closer and closer, and I realized that eventually it'd start hunting me. So then my thought was I should probably kill it before I get food poisoning or something and it starts hunting me. Now this would be a dangerous fight. I've only fought snow hares up until now, and this is an actual fox. So immediately it bites me in the leg, but I got a really good hit in on the neck. I was bleeding out rapidly because it had really hit me good in the leg, but I think I would be able to make it. And this fox marks the end of life living on the ice sheet again, but I had a good food store thanks to the monkeys and the fox, so I was pretty confident about how long I could live here. The sad part is that I could not floor my place. The only floors I could build were wooden, and I had no wood, and also the steam geyser made it so that I couldn't floor over it. I wanted a floor because it would lower the chance of getting infected from these wounds. And while butchering the fox we could see that I'm still longing for human meat, which reminded me of the body I left out a while ago. Our food stores were looking insane, and I realized that with this girl we could have a lot more. So I went to go grab her and butcher her, because I don't think raw cannibalism does any good for your character. So 9.1 days into this challenge I was finally able to get my first human meat. It gave me a nice bonus in mood and also got some human leather out of it, but I wouldn't be able to do too much with it now. But I did realize that I had 60 light leather, and I could finally turn it into a tribal wear, which would help me with the cold temperatures. Light leather is one of the worst materials to make clothes out of, but I didn't have much of a choice. While he was finally done, he created a good tribal wear, and this was very nice. It will provide minor protection for wounds, but most importantly it meant that I could stay outside longer. So finally having clothes and having food, I realized I could finally get the research bench done and begin my base expansion. My character has low intellect, but he has a passion for it, so he could learn how to research very quickly. But of course the major problem was that I'm a tribal, which meant every research project would take twice as long. But all of a sudden, a refugee quest came in. This is either added by royalty or ideology, I don't quite remember. But I figured I shouldn't immediately accept it yet, and I would later accept it when I actually needed some food. Because spoiler alert, there was no situation where I would actually help this guy for 11 days. So I would hold off on it until I actually needed him. Funnily enough, I started getting this much meat that it was actually starting to spoil inside, so I put everything outside in the cold. So I spent the next day repairing all the damages and mining some more steel to get the walls finished of my project, because I figured that the steam guys would also be able to heat up my research room. And on the 12th of August we finally finished our research room, which meant I could finally start researching stuff. And now I had to wonder what to research first. Stone cutting, complex furniture and complex clothing were three things that I was considering. Complex furniture would allow me to make beds and stuff. Clothing would of course allow me to make parkas and stuff for the cold. And then stone cutting would allow me to turn chunks into bricks, which I could use for building and floors. But I realized that clothing might be the most important. And while checking in the wildlife, I had very bad news. A polar bear had wandered in, and these were definitely not afraid of hunting humans. So at this point I realized it's best I get the refugee in here, so maybe he could help me fight the polar bear, and then I could get a 2-for-1. The refugee turned out to actually be really good. Good medical skill and good intellectual. I could put him on permanent research while I took care of the other stuff. He also wanted to name my colony, but I just randomized it. So now that I had 2 colonists, some clothes on my back and a research table built, and I was preparing for an imminent standoff with a polar bear, I'm gonna leave the episode here. Everything is looking way better than it was last episode, and I was very happy to have made good progress. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if anyone watching this would like to be named after a character in game, just leave a comment down below with the name, and if I get a second colonist or an animal, I'll try to name them after you.